They questioned your intentions, they twisted your words, and before you even realized it, you were already defending yourself, explaining, clarifying, justifying, like your value depended on their understanding. You thought if you explained enough, they'd finally see who you really are, but they didn't want truth. They wanted control, and every word you said gave it to them. You felt it too, didn't you? The moment you started talking, something slipped. You weren't standing your ground anymore. You were asking for permission to exist inside their frame. But what if silence was the move that saved you? What if the real power lies not in being heard, but in being unreadable? Because there's something terrifying about the person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't chase validation, who lets the world talk, and simply watches. You're not here to play defense anymore. You're here to learn how to end the game before it begins. Let's begin there. Silence is uncomfortable, not for you, for them. When someone throws a jab, what they expect is energy back, emotion, panic, retaliation, because most people are addicted to reaction. They speak not to express truth, but to provoke movement. But what happens when you don't move? When you just hold still, you strip them of their power. Suddenly, it's not your words being analyzed, it's your silence. Claire learned this the hard way. She was a corporate attorney in Manhattan, known for being precise, quiet, calm. And one day, someone online accused her of manipulating a client. The post went viral in a niche legal forum. People waited for her to clap back, to post a thread, to clear her name, but she said nothing. No tweet, no quote, no indirect response, and that silence stretched. A day, then 2, then 4. The crowd got restless. The accuser started doubling down, adding screenshots, toned speculation, but Claire remained still. What happened next was textbook. People began to ask, if she's not even responding, is it possible this isn't true? Others said, she doesn't seem rattled, maybe she knows something we don't. Some even defended her, unsolicited. Because silence invites interpretation, and the mind hates a void, so it fills it with meaning, with guesses, with fear. That's the secret. Silence, when used with presence, doesn't look passive. It looks prepared. It looks dangerous. You see, silence isn't the absence of power, it's the redirection of power. The average person believes they must speak to protect themselves. The strategist knows protection comes from positioning, not protest. Let them talk. Let them try to bait you. You sit back. You let the echo of their own voice expose them. Because when you don't react, they're forced to. They escalate. They get messier. They show their intent. And you remain a question mark they can't resolve. That's when you flip the frame, because now they look obsessed, they look desperate. They look emotional, you look in control, and in a world addicted to noise, that's what makes you unforgettable. Power doesn't live in the facts, it lives in the frame. Whoever defines the conversation wins the conversation. It's not about truth, it's about who gets to ask the question, because the moment you accept their premise, you're already 2 steps behind. Think about it. If someone says, "Why are you always so arrogant?" and you reply, "I'm not arrogant. You've already lost, because now you're playing their game, you're answering their question, you've accepted their framing. That they have the right to judge you, but what if you didn't answer? What if you turned the frame?" That's what Marcus did, a senior strategist at a London firm. He'd just presented a bold proposal, one that threatened the old way of doing things. In the meeting, a partner interrupted him. "I think you're being too ambitious." She said, with a smile that wasn't kind. The room went still. People turned, waited. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't justify. He leaned back, looked at her, then simply asked, "Would you prefer safe and stagnant?" The frame shattered. Now the spotlight was on her. Now she had to explain. Now she was the one defending. That's the move. Never let them place you on the witness stand. Make them explain why they're holding the gavel. Because once you flip the frame, you flip the pressure, you flip the power. It's not about clever words. It's about clarity of stance. Knowing that you don't owe anyone a reaction, especially when the question itself is the weapon. The strongest response is often not a rebuttal. It's a reframe, a question that makes them hesitate, a silence that makes them wonder, a calm that makes them nervous. The average person tries to win arguments. The strategist avoids the trap entirely. He doesn't fight in the mud. He makes them explain why they're down there alone. Because when you control the frame, you don't just protect your position, you define the game. Most accusations don't need to be answered, they need to be left alone. Because when you touch them, you give them shape, but when you don't, they dissolve. Daniel knew this. He was a rising voice on YouTube, sharp takes, clean edits, unapologetic, and with that came enemies. One day, a smaller creator accused him of stealing content. A video dropped, clips side by side. Claims of plagiarism, anger, everyone waited. Would Daniel respond? Would he take it down? Would he explain? He didn't post. He didn't tweet. He didn't even acknowledge it. And the silence, it felt like thunder. The accuser kept pushing. More claims, more edits, longer videos, trying to turn one spark into fire, but the spark had no oxygen, because Daniel gave them nothing. And then it began. The comments flipped, not against Daniel, but against the accuser. Why do you care so much? Oh, this feels personal. You're reaching now. You're obsessed. The narrative turned, not because Daniel defended himself, but because he didn't. That's the echo effect. When you say nothing, the accusation loops. It gets louder, then awkward, then empty, and the longer it plays unanswered, the more it begins to sound like insecurity on their part. The silence becomes pressure, not on you, on them, because now the crowd isn't asking, "Did you do it?" Oh, they're asking, "Why are they still talking about this?" Silence isn't just avoidance, it's strategy, it's a psychological spotlight. You let them stand in it, let them perform, let them stumble. Most people can't survive their own echoes, because they expected a fight, not a void, and when there's no one swinging back, they keep swinging into the air, into themselves, until the weight of their own accusation collapses. That's the art. You don't bury lies with words. You let them bury themselves under the weight of their own echo. Detachment isn't cold, it's deliberate. Most people believe that when you don't defend yourself, you don't care, but they're wrong. It's not that you don't care. It's that you refuse to compete for approval. That's what makes you powerful. Julia understood this. She was a creative director at a branding agency in Chicago, talented, sharp, unapologetic in meetings, and one afternoon, during a pitch, a team member cut in. "You're always pushing your own ideas. It feels manipulative." The air in the room shifted, eyes turned, the trap was set, the expected response, defense, denial. Some soft version of a "that's not true," but Julia didn't offer that. She didn't lean forward, she didn't explain, she paused, held eye contact, and said, "If that's how you see it." Then silence. The room moved on, but that phrase stayed. Because what she did wasn't dismissive, it was surgical. She didn't fight their perception, she let it hang, let it sit in their own mind. And that created uncertainty, not in her, but in them. You see, the moment you detach, you refuse the emotional frame. You don't give them anything to grip, they throw heat. You remain cool, they shout. You blink slowly, they escalate. You lean back. That's not weakness, that's control. Because detachment isn't the absence of emotion, it's the discipline of owning your own. Most people collapse when accused, not because of the accusation, but because of the internal panic to prove themselves. But when you're grounded, when your worth isn't up for debate, you don't need to win the moment. You only need to own your posture, and posture speaks louder than words. Try this. Next time someone questions your intent, don't rush to reply. Pause, let the weight shift, and if you speak, say something clean, neutral, final. "That's not how I see it." No problem, noted. Short, calm, unshakable, because every time you show you're unbothered, they start to question if they're the one being emotional, and once they start questioning that, they've already lost the frame. Detachment isn't withdrawal, it's leadership, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard. It simply stands still and lets the world adjust around it. Some people destroy themselves trying to destroy you, but only if you let them swing into silence. You don't have to fight back, you just have to hold the mirror. Nathan knew this better than most. He was a behavioral therapist based in Seattle. Years of listening, watching, waiting, he understood human patterns, especially what happens when someone doesn't get the reaction they want. One afternoon, a former client lashed out, accused him online, called him controlling, even unethical. The internet flared up. Whispers, questions, pressure, but Nathan said nothing, didn't reply, didn't deny, didn't block, just silence, no tweets. No threads, no setting the record straight. And the accuser, they kept posting longer messages. More dramatic claims, more desperate energy, until people began to notice the imbalance. Why is he still talking? Why hasn't Nathan responded? Wait, maybe there's a reason he hasn't. Maybe he doesn't need to. That's when it broke. The accuser went from sounding like a whistleblower to sounding unstable, too emotional, too loud, too much, because silence, when grounded, creates contrast. Their voice rising, yours absent, and in that difference, the crowd begins to see who's really in control. When you mirror someone without saying a word, you don't reflect their words, you reflect their intent, their tone, their instability. You show them to themselves, and that's something most people can't survive. They expected you to fight, to explain, to engage, but instead, they ended up performing alone, and the more they performed, the less credible they looked. That's how you flip it, not through dominance, not through clever replies, but through presence, through the tension of nothing. Silence is a magnifier. It doesn't protect you from fire, it reflects it back onto the person holding the match. And when they burn themselves trying to get your attention, all you have to do is let the smoke clear. You never needed to speak, you just needed to wait. Sometimes the strongest move isn't silence, it's inversion. Not only do you not defend yourself, you flip the accusation, you make it theirs. Leo mastered this art. A personal brand strategist in Los Angeles, bold, confident, and often called too much by those who couldn't match his energy. One day, during a live panel, an audience member stood up and said, "You sound arrogant. Like you think you're better than everyone." The room tensed. Everyone waited for the moment, the apology, the backpedal, the awkward laugh. But Leo didn't flinch. He smiled, tilted his head slightly, and said, "Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable." A silence, then a ripple of laughter, but not at him, at the accuser, because in that moment, Leo didn't defend, he reframed. And in doing so, he exposed the insecurity behind the comment. That's the power of inversion. You take their emotional swing and use its force against them. They call you manipulative. Only people who fear influence say that. They say you're fake. But everyone says that when they stop getting what they want. They say you think you're better. No, I just don't think like everyone else. These aren't replies, they're redirects. They don't explain, they imply, and that implication is surgical. Because it cuts where words can't, at their credibility. You're not defending your character, you're turning the spotlight, letting them squirm under their own narrative. This tactic isn't cruel, it's precise. You're not attacking them. You're letting them reveal themselves, and the more they try to justify their original jab, the more obvious it becomes. They weren't seeking truth, they were seeking control, and now they've lost both, because now they're explaining. Now they're backpedaling, now they're exposed. Inversion is power judo. It doesn't block the strike, it turns it, uses it, and lets the attacker fall forward, not from what you did, but from their own imbalance. And when that happens, you don't just win the room, you own it. You don't need a good reputation, you need a strong one. There's a difference. A good reputation is about being liked. A strong reputation is about being respected or feared. The man with a good reputation avoids conflict. He smooths edges, apologizes quickly, explains constantly. He's agreeable, predictable, safe. But the man with a strong reputation, he doesn't speak unless he must, and when he does, every word lands like a blade. Vanessa understood this, a private equity investor in Boston. She was known in her field, but not for charm, not for warmth, for results, cold clarity, unshakable posture. Colleagues whispered that she was too rigid, too serious, too intense, and yet no one disrespected her, no one spoke over her in meetings, no one dared push her publicly. Because her silence wasn't submission, it was signal. You see, a strong reputation isn't built by being liked. It's built by being consistent, by showing up the same way every time, by never reacting emotionally, by holding the same calm even under pressure. People might not love that, but they fear crossing it, and in high-stakes rooms, that matters more than being adored. You'll notice this: those who are always explaining themselves, they get dismissed. Not because they're wrong, but because they're always trying to look right. Meanwhile, those who are misunderstood but steady, they're watched more closely, they're spoken about with caution, because people sense this one doesn't bend. That's reputation. Not image, not polish, not PR, but power. Reputation, when strong, becomes armor. You don't need to speak. You don't need to reply. Your presence enters the room first, and when your name alone creates pause, that's when you've stopped being someone to convince and become someone to consider. The strategist never aims to be nice, he aims to be clear. Clear in what he allows, what he ignores, and what he stands for, even in silence. So build your name like you build a fortress, stone by stone, by how you carry yourself when no one's watching, by what you don't respond to, by the calm you hold when chaos tries to pull you in, because a good reputation fades, but a strong one that echoes. There's a point where silence becomes something else, not just a tactic, not just discipline. It becomes presence, it becomes aura. You walk into a room, people don't just notice you, they adjust to you, not because you said anything, but because they know you could, and chose not to. Owen had that, a creative director in Berlin, tall, composed, quiet. He barely spoke in meetings, but when he did, people listened, and when he didn't, they listened harder. No one really knew where he stood, but they didn't guess casually. They chose their words around him, they measured their tone. Because Owen's silence wasn't absence, it was architecture. It was the room shaping itself around his restraint. That's aura, a space you carry with you. It's not about charm, it's not about being intimidating, it's deeper. Aura comes from consistency, from never reacting to chaos, from never chasing validation, from holding a calm so pure it disarms noise. You see, most people radiate anxiety. They speak fast, they try to be liked, they respond to every poke. They leak emotion constantly, but the strategist, he holds, he listens, he watches, and by doing so, he creates gravity. Aura isn't loud, it's heavy, it doesn't entertain, it absorbs. When you've mastered stillness, not just silence, people start to feel your boundaries before they ever touch them. They don't test you, not because they fear a fight, but because they sense it wouldn't be worth it. Aura is what happens when silence becomes identity, not something you use, but something you are. And in a world full of reaction, the unreadable man becomes untouchable. You won't need to raise your voice, you won't need to defend your name. Your presence will do it for you. Aura is earned, not by force, but by mastery. Mastery of the self, of your tone, your gaze, your pauses, and once you carry that, you don't have to demand respect. It meets you at the door. You've spent years trying to be understood, explaining, clarifying, fixing every misinterpretation before it spread, and yet they still twisted your words, still doubted your intent, still made you feel like truth wasn't enough. But what if the problem was never them misunderstanding you? What if the problem was you thinking their understanding mattered? The moment you stop needing to be understood, you become something else, not just respected, untouchable. Ethan used to defend himself in every meeting. Claire used to reply to every accusation. Marcus used to over-explain his vision. Daniel used to correct every rumor. Julia used to soften every sentence. Nathan used to try to make peace. Leo used to answer everything with logic. Vanessa used to worry about perception. Owen used to rehearse the right way to respond. Now, They all moved different, spoke less, held stillness like a shield, let others reveal themselves, and they didn't just survive, they ascended. That's your path now, because there's a deeper power that lives beyond defense. When you stop trying to be seen as good, and instead become something so solid, so consistent, so composed, that people don't challenge you, they adjust to you. You won't need to convince anymore. The room will tilt, the air will shift, your presence will move things. And when someone tries to drag you into their chaos, you won't even blink, because silence won't be something you use. It'll be something you are. You'll become the man who doesn't chase clarity, the man who doesn't beg for fairness, the man who doesn't flinch when provoked. You won't fight to prove innocence, you'll define your own standard. That's what makes you dangerous, not your volume, not your arguments, but the quiet certainty behind your eyes. And when others try to bring you down, they'll realize something chilling. You're not standing on a platform they can attack. You're standing on still ground they can't reach, so let them talk, let them accuse, let them swing at shadows. You've already left the room they're shouting in. If this hits something in you, then maybe you've already started walking. Not toward noise, but toward control. And if the world starts whispering, starts questioning, starts testing, just remember, some men win with words, but the rare few, they win without ever speaking.